The Prime Minister says it's a question of when, not if, the irregular border crossing at Roxham Road will close. Quebec's Premier François Legault says his province can't handle any more people entering that way. Conservatives are echoing his concerns. The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg is following developments for us in Ottawa, and she joins us now. So, Marina, what's the Prime Minister saying?
Justin Trudeau said this morning when asked about Roxham Road that he does want to shut it down eventually, but it's not as simple as shutting it down within 30 days, which is what Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre said should happen yesterday when he had a press conference. Roxham Road is a major irregular border crossing. It takes in, last year, about 40,000 people crossed there. This year, it is expected to be up to 70,000 people. Justin Trudeau says they do want to shut this irregular border crossing down, but it's not as simple as just shutting it down. Have a listen.
Could somebody put up barricades and a big wall? Yes, if Pierre Poilievre wants to build a wall at Roxham Road, someone could do that. The problem is we have 6,000 kilometers worth of undefended shared border with the United States. The only way to effectively shut down not just Roxham Road, but the entire border to these irregular crossings is to renegotiate the Safe Third Country Agreement, which is serious work that we are doing as a government right now.
Justin Trudeau there mentioned the Safe Third Country Agreement. And to understand what's happening in Roxham Road, you have to kind of understand what that is. So it is an agreement between Canada and the U.S. And it essentially says that if someone comes to Canada or the U.S. seeking asylum, they have to make their claim in that country. They can't then go to the other country. But this only applies to official border crossings. And so when a migrant goes across Roxham Road or any of the other irregular border crossings from the U.S. into Canada, Canadian officials can't turn them away. And so the Liberal government says in order to deal with the issues in Roxham Road and across the country, they need to renegotiate that agreement. And the immigration minister was asked about that agreement and the situation in Roxham Road today during a visit in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Have a listen.
What would happen if we took such an approach rather than actually dealing with people with dignity and respect and pursuing an option that requires bilateral conversations with the United States is you would simply displace the problem to other points along the Canadian-U.S. border. The result would likely be serious risks that would fall upon vulnerable migrants who are seeking safe haven in Canada, who would be forced to potentially cross through a dangerous portion of the border, not knowing how the elements, particularly at this time of year, would impact themselves and their family.
The immigration minister there talking about the other irregular border crossings across Canada, most notably in Emerson, Manitoba, where there is an irregular border crossing there. We have seen people try and cross there in the dead of winter into Manitoba, ending up with frostbitten hands. In some cases, people even dying trying to cross the border. So essentially, the immigration minister is saying they need to deal with this agreement with the United States in order to make sure that people can cross and not end up in harm's way.
And Marina, what's the opposition's stance on all of this?
Yeah, we're hearing from the Liberal government today because yesterday, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre came out and said that Roxham Road should be closed within 1 month's time. He said that essentially Justin Trudeau has thrown the doors open and said, hey, everybody come on over into Canada without following the official means. Now, he was asked exactly what that would mean in terms of shutting down that unofficial border crossing, but he wouldn't give any specific details into what exactly that would entail. Now, this all comes after Quebec Premier François Legault has said at this point his province cannot handle the amount of migrants crossing into Quebec, especially through Roxham Road. To give you an idea, we're talking about 40,000 last year, whereas the other irregular border crossings, according to government statistics across Canada, are in the hundreds. And so he says that Quebec is just not able to handle the number of migrants coming across the border. He's calling on the federal government to help, and he also wants the provinces to step in and take some of these migrants on themselves. Hillary?
Okay, Marina, thank you for all of this. The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg for us in Ottawa. For more on this, we're joined now by Maureen Silkoff. She's a refugee and immigration lawyer at Silkoff Schachter Law Firm. Maureen, thank you so much for making some time for us today.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start by talking a little bit about some of what we've heard from some of these politicians, which Marina, of course, was just reporting on. The opposition, so opposition leader Pierre Poilievre, of course, we heard him yesterday calling for the government to close this down within 30 days. Help us understand, or just your thoughts even, share your thoughts, your reaction to that call.
For sure. So I think the calls by Premier Legault and by Pierre Poilievre to close the border are very disturbing, especially Mr. Poilievre's ultimatum to the Prime Minister to close Roxham Road within 30 days. I'm concerned that these comments have the appearance of essentially turning refugees into political footballs, which should not be happening. And as well, the comments stand in contradiction to Canada's long-standing values of humanitarian assistance to people who need a safe haven here. And I think as well, the calls to seal the border are just basically impractical. We know that if Roxham Road is closed, there'll be other entry points. And as well, it's impossible to seal the entire border, a border this size. People will come anyways, they'll come undetected, they'll come dangerously, there will be more deaths. And one recent example we have of the entire border being closed is during the pandemic, when refugees were not permitted to enter. Now, what did we see happening? It was very problematic. When people were turned back, there were a significant number of people who the U.S. automatically put into jail. And we know of even one person who was deported to their country of origin. So I think we have to take this as a lesson learned, and we know we can do much better. It's understandable that with an increase in numbers of people entering at Roxham Road, there is an increased pressure on Quebec. But as well, there's a solution that's built right into the Safe Third Country Agreement that I think we should be discussing.
So what is that solution? What could be a possible solution here to all of this?
Well, it was anticipated back when the agreement was drafted that there might be situations that require either country to unilaterally act and invoke public policy exceptions to the agreement. So Canada can do that immediately. That's built right into the agreement. Canada can decide if there are specific categories of people to be exempt. And doing this would allow people to enter at ports of entry. It would disperse people away from Roxham Road. People could enter at official ports of entry from coast to coast. That would ease the pressure in Quebec. And at the same time, it would allow Canada to continue to respect its humanitarian obligations and traditions towards refugees. So, I can think of particular categories that would not be difficult to carve out. For example, we know that Canada and the United States interpret the refugee definition with respect to gender-based violent claims differently. And in the United States, it's interpreted unduly restrictively. So Canada can decide to let in people facing gender-based violence through one of these public policy exemptions. I think that's a much better way forward than the methods that are currently under discussion.
So we heard there from the immigration minister saying that it's going to require some renegotiation here with the Americans to try and change some of this. How difficult do you think that sort of negotiation process would be? How likely is it, do you think, that some of these solutions that you're proposing here, that they could actually happen?
Well, with these public policy exemptions, we don't have to have any kind of renegotiation. This is something that Canada can do immediately. And so, while there is discussion, I think this is the best way forward. I'm obviously concerned that there shouldn't be a renegotiation that involves harsher measures. In fact, the ultimate way to deal with this is to end the Safe Third Country Agreement because it no longer serves Canada's purpose. But in the meantime, there's a path forward that I think Canada can use to funnel people away from Roxham Road and deal with the situation that we're facing. Because, of course, as everybody understands, refugees are desperate, they're vulnerable, they're coming to Canada to seek protection from religious or political persecution, or because they face other kinds of violent situations based on their LGBTQ identities. So they deserve our respect, and Canada should maintain its legal obligations, both domestically and internationally, towards refugees.
Okay, Maureen, we're going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate your insight into all of this.
Thank you.
Maureen Silkoff is a lawyer specializing in refugee and immigration law.